My name is Lila Reyes. I'm a software engineer and a mother, and until recently, I was the invisible backbone of a mid-sized tech firm in Chicago. I never thought one misdirected email would change everything, but that's exactly how it started. It landed in my inbox like a grenade. I was scanning bug reports on a Tuesday morning when I saw the subject line, Re-Client Rate Adjustments Q3. I almost didn't open it, but something about the CC list caught my eye. My name wasn't supposed to be there. I read the first sentence and felt my pulse quicken. Lila's billing rate to clients will remain at 280 JR. Keep her at $10 internally through December. She doesn't have negotiating leverage. My hands went cold. The words blurred. The cursor blinked on a screen I couldn't see anymore. I wasn't just underpaid. I was exploited. I knew they billed high for my work, but I had no idea it was that high. $280 an hour. I was making $10. I worked more as a waitress in college. Then came the part that hit harder than the numbers. She's a single mom, community college grad, a classic case of hunger over talent. She'll take whatever we give her. That sentence knocked the air out of me. They weren't just underpaying me. They were doing it because of who I was. Not despite my effort, not out of oversight, but by design. My background wasn't invisible. It was ammunition. My chest tightened as I stared at the screen. The office around me buzzed in a low murmur. Keys clacking, coffee machines humming, completely unaware that my world had just shifted. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was silence. I didn't scream or slam the desk. I just froze, blinking at a version of myself laid bare in corporate shorthand. Not Lila, the developer who'd rebuilt their inventory API from scratch, but classic hunger over talent. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, a one-off. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I remembered the broken laptop they gave me on day one, and how I sat next to the break room fridge because no one had space. I remembered asking about my 6-month review and being told to be patient, that these things take time and that we're all family here. Meanwhile, they were cashing in on my code like it was a gold mine. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was how unsurprised I felt. Part of me had always known, but pushed it down because I needed the job, because I needed the insurance, because rent was due and my son's glucose monitor wasn't optional, because when you fought your way through financial aid forms, secondhand textbooks, and night classes after bedtime routines, you learned to smile through a lot of condescension. That day, I didn't cry. I didn't even close the email. I just minimized the window, opened a blank file, and started typing. Not code, not specs, just thoughts. Rage, shame, grief. I wasn't ready to fight yet, but I knew this, whatever came next, I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. It's easy to judge someone's decisions when you don't know the full story. From the outside, it probably looked like I sold myself short, accepted scraps, and stayed quiet. But when you're holding your child's test results in one hand and your final notice in the other, pride doesn't factor into survival. My son Jordan was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 4. I still remember the way his fingers shook when we learned how to test his blood sugar. I remember learning how to give him injections, hiding my own fear so he wouldn't see it. Health insurance stopped being a luxury that day. It became oxygen. And with my ex gone, there was only me. He left 6 months before the diagnosis. Said he needed space, that fatherhood wasn't what he expected. Left a short note and a joint bank account with $73 in it. I tried tracking him down, but even the private investigator said it wasn't worth the money. So I stopped chasing a shadow and focused on what I had: Jordan rent and a pile of student loan debt with growing interest. I graduated from community college with a degree in information systems and a hope that the tech industry would be my way out. I knew I wasn't coming from Stanford or MIT. I didn't have connections or a fancy resume, but I could work. I could learn fast. I could prove myself if someone just gave me a chance. Midwave Solutions called 2 weeks after I'd applied to 43 different jobs. Their HR rep sounded warm on the phone, but when she said the starting pay was $10 an hour, my stomach dropped. I almost said no. I had bills stacked on the kitchen table like a leaning tower of dread. But then she mentioned benefits, full coverage even for dependents. I paused. Asked if it included pre-existing conditions. She said yes. I said yes. We moved into a 1-bedroom apartment across from a 24-hour pharmacy. Jordan got the bedroom. I slept on a futon in the living room and kept my insulin in the fridge next to cheap frozen meals and dollar store apple juice. I worked during the day and did online courses at night, hoping I'd level up quickly, hoping someone would see how hard I was trying. There were moments when I felt like I was close. One manager called me resourceful. A client emailed saying they finally understood the back end because of the way I explained it. But raises never came. Reviews got pushed back, and I always found a reason not to ask again. Maybe next quarter, maybe when the economy rebounds, maybe after Jordan's next appointment. I stayed because the alternative was worse. Because losing health insurance would mean rationing insulin and emergency room visits. Because I could stretch a $10 paycheck further than anyone I knew, but I couldn't stretch a medical crisis. I stayed because I thought if I kept my head down and worked hard, someone would eventually notice. I used to think that resilience was about smiling through it all, but it's not. It's about doing what needs to be done, even when it feels like you're running on fumes. It's standing in line at the food pantry one day and writing clean, elegant code the next. It's watching other people's lives move forward, while yours is stuck in survival mode and still believing somehow that yours will catch up. That's why I took the job. Not because I didn't know my worth, but because I knew what my son needed. Because sometimes choosing stability means swallowing your pride. Because at that moment in my life, $10 an hour with benefits was the only bridge I had between where I was and where I needed to be. On my first day, they handed me a laptop that wheezed like it had survived the Great Recession. The documentation was 6 years out of date, and the person who last touched the codebase had apparently retired without leaving notes. No one gave me a proper onboarding. No one showed me around. They pointed me to a shared drive labeled legacy stuff and told me to figure it out. So I did. Every night after Jordan fell asleep, I stayed up late studying the infrastructure. I mapped dependencies, traced error logs, and rewrote broken modules one painful bug at a time. The CRM integration was crashing weekly. I rewired the entire sync protocol to stop data loss. The invoicing system couldn't export to PDF without duplicating records. I rebuilt that function from scratch. Every fix started with trial and error and ended with a solution that made life easier for someone, usually a client, rarely my coworkers. Nobody noticed at first. That part didn't surprise me. I wasn't fixing sexy features. I was fixing the ugly stuff. The tools that lived in shadows. The functions everyone used but no one wanted to own. I stabilized the file transfer API that had been throwing silent errors for months. I streamlined form validation scripts that still used outdated rejects from 2011. Most of it wasn't glamorous, but I made it work. Quietly, thoroughly, consistently. Then something started to shift. Clients began asking for me. Not by name because they didn't know my name, but by output. They'd request the same tech who fixed our dashboard issue or who made the inventory report make sense. One even said I had a gift for translating tech into plain English. That stuck with me. Because no one had ever called it a gift before, they just called it extra work. I didn't ask for credit. I just wanted the systems to work. But every bug I squashed and every patch I deployed gave me the confidence I didn't know I had. And without meaning to, I became the go-to for the parts no one else wanted to touch. That mattered to me. It still does. 6 months in, I finally worked up the nerve to ask about the raise. It wasn't even a full conversation. I caught my manager between meetings and reminded him of the promise they made when I was hired. He gave me a tight smile and said we were in a belt-tightening season. Said maybe next quarter, maybe when the numbers improve. That same afternoon, I passed by the break room and saw Garrett, the CTO, joking about his new ski lodge. He was booking a catered retreat for the executive team. I watched him swipe through menu options on his iPad while I made a mental note to water down Jordan's juice boxes to make them last through the week. I skipped lunch that day. Not because I wasn't hungry, but because every bite of the company's free cookies made me feel like I was swallowing guilt. That week, they ordered sushi for a client meeting, a $500 platter. I walked past the leftovers on the conference table and went back to my desk where I was eating a cup of dry cereal from home. I rationed applesauce pouches for my son and picked up night shifts at a gas station once a week, just to cover co-pays and shoes that fit him. Meanwhile, my code kept their biggest clients from jumping ship. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the places you put your faith. I didn't expect luxury. I didn't expect a title. But I expected honesty. I expected that when they said they'd invest in people who invest in us, they meant it. What they meant was to stay quiet, be grateful, smile at the quarterly newsletter while your grocery list is half crossed out. The worst part wasn't being underpaid. It was realized they never intended to change that I was never seen as someone worth keeping long term, just someone to squeeze value from until I broke or burned out. That realization didn't come with a breakdown. It came with silence, with a quiet, growing fire that told me if I wanted different, I'd have to build it myself. It started as a whisper in my head, a question I couldn't shake. What if I built something better, not for them, for me, for people like me? I wasn't thinking about clients or investors. I just wanted to prove that I could. Every night after Jordan fell asleep, I'd clear the dinner dishes and open my old laptop. It was slow, held together with duct tape and luck, but it powered on. I'd sit at the kitchen table in my oversized hoodie coffee gone cold beside me and disappear into code. For the first time in months, I wasn't fixing other people's broken systems. I was creating something new. I named it Brightwave. It was a simple idea at first, a cleaner, faster portal system for small businesses to manage internal workflows. But as I wrote line after line, something shifted inside me. I wasn't just building software. I was building a way out. My hands moved faster with each session, not out of pressure, but purpose. I mapped interfaces on scrap paper, drew data flows on the back of old mail, and read white papers until my eyes burned. There was peace in that quiet work. No one is watching over my shoulder. No deadlines I didn't agree to. Just me, my thoughts, and the hum of possibility. It was like remembering a version of myself. I thought I'd buried the one who believed in ideas, who saw problems, and wanted to solve them, not just survive them. Some nights I doubted everything. Who did I think I was trying to build a platform alone with no funding, no team, no time? But then I'd run a test and watch something actually work, and it felt like reclaiming a piece of my identity. Not just Lila the employee, Lila the builder. Lila is the architect of her own future. I wasn't sure where it would lead. I wasn't dreaming of millions. I just wanted to feel proud of something again. Brightwave was still a skeleton back then. Rough, half done, barely held together. But it was mine. Every function, every detail, every hour stolen from sleep was mine. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel stuck. I felt free. Her name was Dana. She lived 2 doors down, and we'd passed each other in the hallway for years, without ever talking much, beyond a tired smile. One night after Jordan and her daughter Mia fell asleep during a playdate, we sat on my couch with leftover mac and cheese and talked for real. She used to be a UX designer, laid off during the last round of tech cuts. Said she hadn't touched a Figma board in months. I told her about Brightwave. Not the whole vision, just the pieces I'd managed to stitch together. She leaned in, curious. Asked if I had a front end yet. I laughed and told her I barely had a logo. The next night, she came back with her laptop. Said she couldn't stop thinking about the idea. Asked if I'd let her take a crack at designing the interface. We cleared space on my kitchen table, made a fresh pot of coffee, and dove in. At first, it felt like a game. 2 tired moms playing startup between midnight and sunrise. But then something clicked. She took my back-end sketches and turned them into wireframes that felt alive. Clean lines, soft gradients, intuitive flow. She asked the kinds of questions I'd never thought to ask. What would it feel like for someone to use this after a 12-hour shift? How do we make it so no one feels dumb the first time they log in? We started meeting almost every night. We'd tuck the kids into bed, open our laptops, and build. She brought color to my logic. I brought structure to her vision. We high-fived over late-night breakthroughs and laughed at our own mistakes. The apartment was filled with whiteboard notes, sticky tabs, and hope. One night around 2 a.m., after we solved a complex navigation bug, She looked at me and said, "This isn't just a side project anymore." She was right. That was the moment it shifted from an escape plan to a blueprint. Brightwave wasn't just mine now. It was ours. Built from scratch, fueled by exhaustion and belief. For the first time, it felt real. Like we weren't just dreaming of better, we were building it. Together. They called me into the conference room when 5 minutes before the biggest demo of the quarter. I wasn't on the invite list. No one had warned me. Garrett's nephew Ben was supposed to lead it. He'd been working on it for weeks, or at least that's what he told everyone. The client was already seated when I walked in, the suits and heels with tablets open and notes ready. Meridian Technologies, our biggest account. Ben looked pale, sweating as he clicked through the interface. Nothing was working. Buttons were unresponsive. The dashboard glitched. Then the screen froze. Everyone stared at the monitor. Garrett whispered something under his breath. Ben mumbled about unexpected bugs. I glanced at the error logs and saw the issue in seconds. A lazy merge. He'd deployed the wrong branch. I stepped forward without asking, plugged in my laptop, launched a backup build I'd quietly maintained for months because I never trusted his process. The screen flickered. Then it loaded, fast, clean, stable. I walked them through each feature like I'd built it from memory. Because I had. I explained the architecture behind the dashboard, the caching fix I implemented last week, and the API optimization that cut load time in half. My voice was calm, but inside I was burning. Not with nerves, but with focus. Pure, sharp clarity. They asked questions. I answered without pause. I could feel the shift in the room. Eyes on me. Noticing. Really seeing me for the first time. When it was over, Meridian's CEO looked directly at me. Asked who I was. Garrett opened his mouth, but I answered first. Just part of the dev team, I said. That moment cracked something open. For them. For me. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't just patching holes in the background. I was the reason the demo didn't collapse. And no matter what Garrett said later, everyone in that room knew exactly who had saved it. 2 days after the demo, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. But something told me to answer. Her voice was calm and direct. It was Elise, the CEO of Meridian. She didn't waste time with small talk. She said she'd been watching me during the presentation. Said it was rare to see someone troubleshoot and lead with that kind of precision under pressure. She asked about my role, about how long I'd been with the company. I told her the truth, just over a year. Then she asked what they paid me. I hesitated, said it was complicated. She was quiet for a beat, then asked again. I told her, $10 an hour. The silence on the line stretched so long that I thought the call had dropped. Then she exhaled low and sharp. That explained a lot. She asked why I stayed. I explained about my son, the insurance, and he promised they would delay and never deliver. I didn't expect sympathy, but she gave it anyway. She said she saw my work. That real talent doesn't hide for long. Then just like that, she asked if I had anything of my own, something I'd been working on, something better. I almost lied, almost said no. But something about her tone made me speak. I told her about Brightwave. Not everything, just enough for her to ask if I'd show it to her. She gave me her direct number, said no one else at Midwave needed to know. Not yet, and before she hung up, she said one more thing. If what you've built is even half as solid as what I saw you do live, we should talk again. Soon. I stared at the phone for a long time after. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from something else, from hope, real hope. For the first time, I saw a door I hadn't even known existed, and it was opening, just enough for me to step through. I printed my resignation on plain white paper and folded it once clean and sharp. No letterhead, no logos. Just my name, the date, and a simple statement that I was leaving in 2 weeks. Garrett was on a call when I knocked on his open door. He held up one finger without looking up like I was a distraction. I waited. When he finally hung up, he leaned back in his chair with that smug half smile I'd grown used to. I placed the letter on his desk and said it clearly. I'm resigning. He didn't touch the paper, just looked at me like I'd said something absurd. Then he laughed. A short, sharp laugh that bounced off the glass walls. Said maybe Meridian made me a ridiculous offer. Said I was chasing something I couldn't possibly understand. That running a company was more than long nights and ambition. It was the capital. It was a risk. It was knowing my place in the food chain. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, and asked where I thought I was going. I told him I was starting something new, something of my own. His smirk returned. He called it cute, said it would be fun to watch me try. I didn't flinch. I didn't explain. I just picked up my bag, turned to leave, and paused at the door. Then I looked back at him. My voice was steady even. You'll see. He didn't laugh that time, just stared as I walked out. And I kept walking past the desks, past the quiet stairs, past everything I'd outgrown. The weight I'd carried for 15 months lifted with every step. I didn't feel scared. I felt ready. The hallway felt longer than usual. Maybe it was the silence or the way people looked up without saying a word. Some nodded, some didn't. I didn't stop walking, not until I reached the elevator. And when those doors closed behind me, it felt like something snapped free. I stood there in the reflection, clutching my bag like armor. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. What I felt was lighter. Like I'd just set down something I'd been carrying so long, I forgot it was crushing me. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. In the lobby, the receptionist gave me a curious glance. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Outside, the wind hit my face, and I pulled my coat tighter. But inside, I was warm, steady, certain. I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking toward something. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with Dana. We reviewed timelines, organized code repositories, and sketched out our next 2 sprints. It wasn't glamorous. We worked in sweatpants, surrounded by half-finished school projects and cereal bowls. But we had clarity. We had momentum. And every time I remembered the look on Garrett's face, I felt that same steady fire. I didn't need to prove anything to him. He'd already told me what he thought I was worth. Now I would show him what he underestimated. You'll see. It wasn't just a line. It was a promise. A quiet declaration that something was coming. That I wasn't going to burn the old place down. I was going to build something better. And when it stood tall enough, they'd have no choice but to look up. And they'd see. All of them would see. The letter came on a Tuesday. Thick, envelope heavy, seal, the kind of thing that doesn't whisper. It announces. My name typed in bold. Legal language I had to read 3 times before it sank in. Midwave was suing me. Theft of intellectual property. Breach of contract. Interference with business relationships. It was absurd and terrifying. I sat on the floor in my living room, the letter in one hand, the other clenched tight. Jordan was watching cartoons in the next room. I couldn't let him see me shake. I called my lawyer. He said we were fine. That Brightwave was built on my own time with my own tools on my own hardware. That I'd documented every step. Still, hearing it and believing it were 2 different things. But then, something strange happened. A week later, an article dropped. Someone had leaked internal Midwave emails to a tech journalist, including the one with the line about me being a community college hunger case. It went viral within hours. The comments lit up with people who'd lived that exact story, who'd been underpaid, dismissed, or sidelined. Suddenly, I wasn't a rogue coder. I was a symbol. Messages poured in. Strangers thanked me for speaking up. Developers offered support. Designers offered help. Recruiters asked if I was hiring. Dana and I just stared at the screen in disbelief. We hadn't asked for this spotlight, but there it was, shining bright and hot. Then came the call from a startup investor. He'd seen the article and wanted to talk, asked for a demo. I said yes. We prepped like mad, built a pitch deck, and practiced every answer we could think of. When we finally presented Brightwave, he leaned back and nodded. Said we were solving problems no one else was touching. Said he'd get back to us soon. He wasn't the only one. 2 other investors reached out that same week. One of them even said quietly that Midwave had tried to pitch him a similar product 2 years ago, but never followed through. That's when I realized the lawsuit wasn't just about code. It was about fear. About what we'd built, about what they hadn't. Midwave's leadership did damage control, a poorly written press release that only made things worse. Then Garrett gave an interview on a business podcast. He said I should have been grateful for the opportunity, that $10 an hour was generous for someone with my background. That's when everything shifted. The backlash was immediate. Developers, CEOs, tech media, everyone slammed the clip. Screenshots flew, memes exploded. By the end of the day, 3 of Midwave's biggest clients announced they were exploring new vendors. One of them called me directly. I still remember the voice on the other end. Calm, professional, curious. She said they'd been watching everything unfold and were impressed with how we'd handled it. Asked if Brightwave could support a migration within 60 days. I said yes, then hung up and screamed into a pillow. The day after that, we got our first signed contract. It felt unreal, like we'd been fighting to climb a wall for so long, and suddenly someone dropped a ladder. We moved fast, expanded our servers, set up client onboarding, hired 2 more women I'd worked with before, both brilliant, both overlooked for years. We worked late, fueled by coffee and disbelief. At night, I'd sit on the couch with my laptop and reread that lawsuit, not to punish myself, but to remember. To remind myself how far we'd come. I didn't feel scared anymore. I felt seen. That month, Brightwave was profiled in a major tech publication. The headline called me the founder who turned exploitation into innovation. The story traveled. Podcasts called. Investors called again. And through it all, Midwave stayed silent. My lawyer filed our official response. We included every timestamp, every document, and every bit of proof that Brightwave was built from scratch. A few weeks later, the lawsuit was quietly withdrawn. No apology, no retraction, just silence. But I didn't need their admission. I already had something better. We had clients, we had a community, we had each other, and I had something no one could take from me. Not a company, not a title, a voice, and a platform. Both digital, both real, both mine. When their lawyers reached out with a settlement offer, I took a deep breath before responding. It wasn't about money anymore. I had what I needed. Brightwave was growing. My name had been cleared, but I couldn't walk away without asking for one more thing. I told them I'd agree to settle quietly under one condition. Not a payout, not an apology. A policy change, real change. I wanted written proof that their pay bands would be made transparent, that no one could be paid $10 while bringing in hundreds for the company. I asked for mentorship programs, for promotion pathways that didn't depend on backroom conversations or biased assumptions, for audits, for fairness, for the next single mom sitting at that kitchen table with a broken laptop and no backup plan. At first they resisted, said it wasn't typical, said legal couldn't enforce HR decisions. I said that was fine. Then the deal was off. They came back 2 days later with a draft. Not perfect, but a start, a commitment, and sometimes a start is all you need. I didn't ask for the spotlight, but I learned that when you get one, you can use it to shine on something bigger than yourself. This wasn't about revenge. I wasn't trying to humiliate anyone. I just wanted to make sure no one else had to go through what I did and feel alone. When the paperwork was signed, I didn't celebrate. I didn't post about it. I just sat with it, quietly proud, fully aware, not just of the fight, but of what came after. That peace, real peace, isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of justice. And if I had a say in how that would look for someone else even just once, I was going to use it. That was my condition. And they agreed. Jordan has his own room now. A real one. With walls he helped paint and shelves full of books and science kits. He still leaves his Legos all over the floor, but now I don't step over them half asleep after coding until dawn. Now I step over them on the way to my own office. One with my name on the door. Brightwave has grown more than I ever let myself imagine. We're not a unicorn, not yet. But we're solid. We've got real clients, real revenue, and a team that cares as much as I do. Every person we hire knows what it means to be overlooked. And every policy we write makes sure no one stays invisible again. Some days, I still can't believe it. The emails from founders asking for advice. The notes from young coders who say my story made them stay in school. The moms say they watched this video during a lunch break and decided not to give up. That's what keeps me going. Not the headlines, not the numbers, but the knowing that something I built, something born in silence and exhaustion, actually made someone feel less alone. Garrett hasn't called. I don't expect he ever will. But I don't need him to. Because I know he sees it. He sees the articles. He hears the podcasts. He watches the client list grow. And maybe, just maybe, he understands now. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't winning a fight. It's building something so strong, so undeniable that the people who once laughed have to look up to see it. And when they do, they won't just see code. They'll see courage. They'll see grit. They'll see me. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. If this story meant something to you, share it. Leave a comment. Subscribe. You never know who might need to hear it next. And if you're standing where I once stood, tired and unseen, just remember. Keep building. They'll see.